Vic Goddard, the school. We're in the school. The school remains open, but March the 8th. Are you looking forward to March the 8th?
Cannot wait. In fact, we're going to be starting our testing regime hopefully before that. We're going to finalise it this week. But yeah, the best bit of the job's missing, Michael. So we just are desperate to have the children back. There's not a teacher in the country who'd vote to do it online, I don't think.
So you said about the testing regime. Can you explain a little bit about what the testing regime is,
Yeah.
and will it work?
Yeah, I mean, so we've been told by the government that we need to offer 3 tests to every young person on their return to school. And once they've done 3 tests in school, we're then able to then issue them with a home testing kit, which will give them the equivalent of 2 tests per week over the course of the next 7 weeks. But we can't do that until they've done the tests in school. So we've got to work out how we can get through the testing of offering tests to every child for when they arrive back. But we need to also make sure they're in lessons. So it's about the balance of getting through the tests, but also getting the school open. So unfortunately, the truth around the schools being open for everybody from March 8th isn't going to happen because we've got to do the testing as well. So it's going to take a little bit longer. But hopefully, I know I've been to visit stewards this morning who've got their testing regime set up, and it looks great, and the kids are already doing it. So we'll be copying them.
But will there be a possibility? Yes, the stats are good. That Harlow in January the 6th
Yeah,
had
no,
11,
absolutely.
1,178 cases. Yes, they had 92, etc. But it could go back up, couldn't it?
Yeah, it could. And I'm not a virologist. I'm not a medical person. You have to accept the fact that Chris Whitty stands up on as the medical officer for England and says that this is the right thing to do. Who am I to question he's not? A bit like Jurgen Klopp. I'm not an expert in that. So there is a worry because we could see when schools went back, the rise before. I'm hoping that the testing, mask wearing, the fact that vaccinations are in the community, all of those things will accumulate to it being a safer place.
Mask wearing mandatory in the school?
It's an interesting one, Michael, I'm afraid, and that's one that we're still all looking for clarity from the government, because at the moment the government guidance is incredibly clear. Yes, students, unless they can be 2 metres apart from everybody at all times, they need to wear a mask, including in classrooms. That's what the guidance currently says. Mr. Gibb this morning in an interview on the BBC said they're not compulsory, they're optional up to the school. Now, unfortunately, what Mr. Gibbs says isn't what the guidance says. So we are legally obliged to follow. So as we have this conversation today, when our young people come back, the moment they're in the building, they'll have to wear a mask, and that includes sitting in classes. I'm hoping that there'll be some clarity about that, because the reality is, even if I'm wearing a mask, if I test positive, the person sitting next to me still needs to be isolated. So there's a little bit of a clash in that. So we've got to get some clarity before we can give parents clarity. But as of today, that would be the expectation.
And what about, you're a school that has its own architect.
Yeah.
You're a school that's got a huge amount of space. So is that a luxury for you, and can you use that?
We are incredibly fortunate. Obviously, we're not in a building with narrow corridors and things like that. But the reality is, no matter how big your space is, can I guarantee that every child is 2 metres apart from another child if they're not wearing a mask? No. So even in this wonderful big space, we're still going to be, we're sitting 2 metres apart. But at some point, children are going to be sitting here with their friends sitting there eating. You can't wear a mask when you're eating. So there's a balance, I think, that we've got to get right. But it's a worry, of course.
How much catching up will some pupils have to do?
It all depends on what you mean by that, Michael. And it's a word the media uses greatly. Catching up to a model that somebody has decided they need to catch up to. And the reality is that's a model that was put in place without a pandemic, when children were in school every day, and the reality is they're not catching up to anything. They are where they are. We have to accept that. They have missed, this particular group of Year 11 have missed the best part of a year of school. So we shouldn't expect them to catch up. It is not possible to catch up. What we need to do is make sure they get what they need to make the next steps in their life. And so that's what we'll be doing. We'll be looking at the curriculum, deciding what's important, we must teach them, what would be a luxury, and let's get through the important stuff and then worry about the luxuries later. So I don't think they've got anything to catch up to. We've just got to make sure they get the most out of the rest of their education.
And what about the mental health aspect? Is there a fine line between addressing the issues and not almost overplaying it, that if you don't have mental health, that's your problem?
Yeah, and it's interesting. We did a questionnaire with our young people on their mental health. We sent it out and said, how are you feeling, etc. And of course, the difficulty on then getting the results is, well, if I hadn't asked, would they have been okay? But I did ask, so now they're saying they're not okay, so I now need to deal with that as an adult, which is the right thing to do. I guess the answer in my head would be, okay, in some cases it might not be as bad as they're portraying. but who am I to judge? And what I should do is just make sure that the support is in place for all people who need it. And young people are generally quite honest. Once we've got them face to face, it'll be a lot easier, because we pick up on those signs and you notice the small things.
But the period between March and July and then that summer, have you got to get children out in your playgrounds and your fields, haven't you, as well?
Certainly. I mean, thankfully, the government has appointed a czar for the catch-up czar, or whatever they call him, Sir Kevin Collins, who's a very sensible man. I know him really quite well. And the first thing he said was, this is not just about exams, this is about, catching up on the things of art and drama and music and PE and getting out and about and socialising. So exam results are always a part of what's important, but they're not everything.
Are you looking forward to a time when that we don't see Vic Goddard on Radio 2 all the time, or some television programmes, or indeed here? You would just want to get back to being the head. I
can't wait. The last few weeks, education seems to be the only thing that's been in the news for the last few weeks, and I do 5% of what I'm asked to do, because I tend to choose what's important and the things I think are going to make a difference. But it's a privilege to be asked, but I'm very happy when they forget us and we can just get on with our job. So I came a teacher because this is what I love doing, not the other stuff. And so at the moment, I'm not doing the bit I love, which is interacting with the kids. So I just cannot wait. And as I said to you before, there is not a teacher in the country who would vote for carrying on with what we're doing right now. Let's get them back in and do what we love.